then strap yourselves in, because we're going to speak freely, because we don't care. Go on, come feel my collar. Go, you just try. You nick me out of this building. You try and take me from the warm bosom of News UK and see how the Murdochs are going to react. I don't know. I shouldn't push my luck, should I? I just, I do think that I've got a degree of sort of, there's a degree of protection there. I don't think the government wants to sort of get on the wrong side of News Corps, but you never know. But Nigel Farage has been over in the United States, telling them that we've got a lot of problems with free speech in this country. Meanwhile, Britain's top cop, the Met Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley, has demanded a return to common sense policing. There's a lot of buck passing going on here. Who is behind the order to start arresting people for tweets? Yeah. And I'm not sure where the buck does stop.
Well, we've got an activist police force, so, when they start talking about common sense, they're talking drivel, basically. I was just thinking about this today and looking at my own Twitter feed and thinking about the things I've said in the press and in social media, and it's got me into trouble before. Okay, I was cancelled from my job in a university for speaking the truth, actually. But it isn't just about livelihood now. You're not just in danger of losing your livelihood. You're actually in danger of losing your liberty now. Okay, if you tweet something that they don't like or that some trans person takes objection to, okay, then you're in danger of losing your liberty. Now that narrative has moved on quite a lot. The window's shifted radically in the last 2 years?
Yeah. But where did this come from? How did this all happen? Because there are examples in other parts of Europe. I was doing a podcast for Brussels, publication in Brussels earlier today, and there was an example in Germany where someone called a politician a moron and was arrested. There was another case, and I believe that was Germany as well, where a woman called some migrant rapists names, and she was the one who got arrested. Yeah. So this isn't unique to Britain, but I do think that we are the vanguard. We are the worst of it by the looks of things. When did this begin? Because it now seems to have been something that has become expected or normalised, and I can't remember the first time that there was a sort of you're being arrested for hurty words. What was sort of ground zero? What was the first case?
I think it's when activism really went on steroids, and so I think this has been around for about 10 years, and I think it's when identity politics went mainstream, when identity politics went onto social media, okay, and everybody just went berserk with it. So this idea that part of my identity is sacrosanct, it's protected, and anything you do, right, for instance, I'm a man who likes to wear knickers and suspenders on the weekend, okay? Anything you do, I can go up and call you names and hit you and do whatever, but because I have this protected characteristic, because I'm allegedly vulnerable, then it's me the victim and not you. And I think that upside down world of identity politics has taken us here.
But it's for me, it's a very easy way to just nip this in the bud and get rid of it right now. And that'd be if Sir Keir Starmer stood up and said, we're getting rid of the nonsense that is a non-crime hate incident. Because that's not a thing. No. It isn't a crime. No. Get rid of that. Frankly, throw away hate speech, because sticks and stones and all the rest of it, but he ain't going to do that. No. But he could turn around as Prime Minister, or Shabana Mahmood or whatever she's called, Justice Minister, could say we're going to scrap the existence of non-crime hate incidents. It's wasting police time, and it has led to this sort of nonsense policing.
And it always makes them look stupid as well. I mean, if you think about the Alison Pearson case, for example, it's a really great example, isn't it, where they wade in, God knows how many coppers invade her house, take her away, question her, and do all of that kind of thing, and they look absolutely stupid. We've got this thing with Graham Linehan,
do they not realise that they are working on behalf of somebody who is vindictive and using the police to bully and intimidate somebody? The police allowing themselves to almost be employed for free by someone who's got a grudge or got beef with someone else. I'm sorry, but you're coppers. You're supposed to be independent of this. You wouldn't roll into the middle of a domestic and start beating up a wife on behalf of the husband. So why on earth, when whoever phones up and says, I've read this thing online, I don't like it, I don't feel safe, I feel offended, I want to report them to the police, do they not say, grow up? up.
Yeah,
I'm afraid we're not here to sort of run round and say, they don't like you, we're going to take you to prison now. It's just...
No, but these are the same coppers that are dancing, that are festooned in pride flags. These are the same coppers that, big strapping 6-foot coppers who on certain days are wearing red stilettos. These are the same coppers who are posing with fetishists in GIMP masks, you know what I mean? So there isn't a sense that they are the adults, that they are enforcing the law or they are preventing the crime, preventing crime. They are just there as part of a particular community, the right ideology, and they are completely divested of any power because they're within it. They're not stood outside it and looking on. Now, that is the really worrying thing as far as I'm concerned. It's all about ideology. It's all about this. Again, as I say, it's the long march through the institutions. And we had a few weeks ago, wasn't there? There was a, was it Birmingham? The chief constable of Birmingham is a ginger bloke, and he had a turban on, and he was talking about Sikhs and celebrating Sikh culture.
And he had a turban on.
And he had a turban on.
What have you done that for, son?
Because he's an idiot. You know, and this is what we've got, this sense of siloed identity politics, which has just taken we have a police service now, we don't have a police force, and you're absolutely right in saying that we need to transform it back into a force. They need to stand up and be counted rather than kowtowing to every bloke that wants to wear a pair of red stilettos.
I mean, what's interesting about Nigel Farage's intervention, just reading this actually, is the sort of the slapback from Sir Keir Starmer is that apparently Farage's written evidence to the inquiry over in America suggested that US enforced freedom of speech with diplomacy and trade. So suggesting, well, slap some tariffs on Britain unless Sir Keir Starmer gets a handle on this. And, you know, Sir Keir said at PMQs he had flown to America to badmouth and talk down our country and suggested the Americans impose sanctions on the UK, adding that you cannot get more unpatriotic than that. It's a disgrace. And Nigel hitting back saying that was a falsehood. But quite frankly, I think if he had gone to America and said, why don't you just level the threat against Starmer, it would have worked. Starmer with this sort of pouring up at Donald Trump's lapel, you know, da-da, here's an invitation. Actually, I think most of Britain, if Donald Trump turned around and said, we're going to impose 25% tariffs on you unless you get rid of non-crime hate incidents, would be like, well, get in. He would love it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm constantly feeling a sense of shame and ridicule when I think of our country on the world stage now. And it's because we've got this regime, it almost feels like they're an occupying regime, doesn't it? But we have this regime that's at the end of days. I mean, they've only been in power for a year, but it feels like it feels like the end of the Second World War, doesn't it? You know, it feels like the occupying powers in France are, on the run. They don't know what to do, so they're becoming authoritarian. They're making stupid judgments, and they're trying to kind of, victim blame people, and you see it all the time. So it's just been one catastrophe after another. And I've got friends friends in America who mail me constantly and say, I've just seen you doing this, or I've just seen you talking about what the hell is going on in your country. Never used to have that. Even with the Tories, we thought the Tories were so bad. Never used to have that.
But arguably, this nuttiness we actually imported from America.
We did, yeah.
Apparently at this Congress hearing, there's a particular Democrat, no, we don't know either, he's called Jamie Raskin, apparently he's clashed with Nigel before, who called him a Putin-loving free speech imposter and a fringe politician. Well, if you're going to stand up and start making accusations about something, you would think he has done his research. And fringe politician, when Reform is polling a third of the vote right now, and the Conservatives on 17 and Labour Party's on 19%, you'd think that he would actually do a little bit of research. But I do like Nigel's answer, because he said, you can say what you like, I don't care, because that's free speech. Exactly.
Well, I mean, Nigel can just bat that stuff away day after day and just make them look stupid. But what I really miss, actually, are grown-up politicians who are actually, I was talking about Angela Rayner before and how she's just promoted way beyond her ability. I really miss sensible politicians who are actually clever, who should be there.
I miss conviction and backbone.
Exactly.
An adult
Margaret
in
Thatcher,
the room.
well, just conviction politicians like Margaret Thatcher, but even politicians that I didn't like or I didn't agree with, but I respected them for their intellect. People like Michael Foot, for example.
Right.
Nothing that he says I agreed with, but my God, the man was eloquent. He could stand up to Enoch Powell. They could have a discussion. You know what I mean? Today,
this lot are so low grade, it's embarrassing. Let's look at a bit of statesmanship, shall we, and have a little look at Nigel Farage in Congress in America yesterday.
You can say what you like, I don't care, because that's what free speech is. And in a sense, this has all been going wrong now for a couple of decades. We've kind of forgotten the Voltairean principles that we'll fight and defend to the death your right to say something that we fundamentally disagree with. That is the absolute foundation, if you think about it, of free speech, of democracy, of living in freedom. It's kind of why we fought 2 world wars at massive, massive cost, to defend that very principle. You know, I come from the land of Magna Carta. I come from the land that gave us the mother of parliaments, and it doesn't give me any great joy to be sitting in America and describing the really awful authoritarian situation that we have now sunk into.
And that is exactly what a politician in this country should be doing. They should be assertive. They should be taking the fight to where it needs to be taken. They should be standing up for this country. The problem with the Tories, who are supposed to be the opposition, they're just twiddling their thumbs and putting out videos like they're in some sort of, I don't know, tech college doing an NVQ in media studies.
The thing is, Nigel Farage is a statesman. Whatever you think about him, and I'm a big fan, so, you know, he's a statesman. He's absolutely comfortable on the world stage, whereas, you know, Starmer is a joke. The Tories are just nowhere. I think of... so Robert Jenrick has come out today and said lots of stuff about immigration, lots of really sensible stuff, and actually outflanking Nigel on the right. But I think of Robert Jenrick, and I actually don't think of him as a Tory. I think of him as separate to the Tory party and, like, you know, the Robert Jenrick party. You know, we're talking about people defecting to reform. Robert, please go over. You know, I would really love to see him
this has always been my beef, actually, as someone, of course, I'm an independent journalist now, but as someone who was sort of in UKIP from 2007, you know, I've been on the front line, I've done my time, but back when, you know, the word Brexit didn't exist and just saying you wanted to leave the EU had you ostracised as a sort of BNP light and all the rest of it. Being a Brexit Party MEP, been there helping to establish reform, then moved back into journalism. And one thing that annoys me is when you get Conservatives who suddenly go, I still want to be a politician, and the party's clearly done for, so now I'm going to go. Yeah. More of them should have had the conviction to go earlier, when it was actually a sacrifice, when it was a brave thing to do, because that is conviction, not self-service.